The Techmarine has officially arrived as a new class to Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, and initially I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought that I would. I needed to clear a couple of absolute operations solo, not necessarily true solo, but just solo with bots in order to really see what the class was capable of doing. And now that I've done that, I can see what the developers were going for when they made the Techmarine. The Techmarine is a glass cannon that can dish out a ton of damage in the right circumstance, especially when you find a Tarantula Sentry gun. Speaking of the Tarantula Sentry guns, let's talk about the two things that make the Techmarine unique. First off, you have its ability, the servo gun, which is the shoulder-mounted gun that you see on my Blood Raven Techmarine on the right there, and then you also have the Tarantula Sentry guns, which you find throughout a map in randomized locations that are fixed, so you will memorize these locations over time, but sometimes you go to a location where you think there's going to be a Tarantula Sentry gun, and it may or may not be there. Like I said, they're randomized and spread throughout the level. The servo gun can be specialized into a bolter, or it can be specialized into a plasma gun, and depending on what perks you choose, the duration of the ability is going to change. For example, if you choose the Precision Enhancement perk, then you're going to see that your ability duration is going to be nerfed tremendously, but the damage of it, in theory, should be much higher. It is also used to perform your gun strikes, so it frees up that animation and action and allows you to do other things while you're gun striking enemies. I've found that specializing your servo gun with the Plasma Enhancement and the Omnisize Fury class perk is one of the best and most satisfying ways to run the servo gun. The Tarantula Sentry guns are an interesting mechanic because everything in the area around a sentry gun just dies. It's worth fighting around the Tarantula Sentry guns, and it's also worth kiting bosses to them as well. If you spawn a boss, but you know that there's a sentry gun in the room prior, then you definitely want to bring that boss over there so that everybody could take advantage of the reinforced position team perk, as opposed to battlefield repairs and combat squad resupply, which I've tested and seem pretty lackluster compared to just having the benefits of reinforced position. Effectively, what this means is that as long as you have access to the Tarantula Sentry gun, always be fighting around it. It's going to help keep you alive, and it's going to help your team do additional damage so that you all save on resources. And managing your resources is really important for this class because you can't recover any ammo with it, but you can replenish your equipment. And this works out because you have a couple of perks like Methodical Destruction, where you'll be able to increase the amount of damage that enemies take by 25% whenever they're damaged by your equipment. The Techmarine also has a ton of perks that increase your melee weapon damage, like Push the Advantage, Counter-Offensive Protocols, and the Prestige perk, Furious Gunstrike. This really benefits weapons like the Power Axe or the Xenophase Blade, because you're able to damage a lot of enemies at the same time with either your Power Rakes from the Xenophase Blade or the Power Waves from the Power Axe. The Techmarine is an interesting playstyle because you can't really specialize completely into range damage, completely into equipment damage, completely into using your servo gun, or completely into melee damage. In the typical operation, I normally find that I use the servo gun mostly for replenishing salvo and for counter-offensive protocols. I'm activating it, getting a couple of shots off with it, and then deactivating it in order to preserve the ability. This is very similar to the Heavy's Iron Halo, where you're able to activate it and deactivate it in order to take advantage of the core perk Overwhelming Power and the gear perk Brute Force. The primary weapons that the Techmarine can use are the Auto Bolt Rifle, the Heavy Bolt Rifle, the Oculus Bolt Carbine, and the Plasma Incinerator. You can also use every secondary in the game to include the Bolt Pistol, Heavy Bolt Pistol, Plasma Pistol, Inferno Pistol, and the Neo Volkite Pistol. Any number of primary and secondary combinations are going to work really well. I personally like the Oculus Bolt Carbine with the Rate of Fire Plasma Pistol, but I could see things like double plasma working, or if you wanted to go full in on bolt guns, then you totally could by taking the heavy bolt rifle or bolt rifle in order to get access to grenades or the combi melta. Melee weapons are where it gets a little interesting because you have a lot of melee damage increasing effects in your perk tree, and so taking something like the Xenophase blade for its really high damage dealing power rakes is kind of a no-brainer, in addition to the block power axe for its high damage dealing power waves. If you want to use the new weapon, the Ominous Iron Axe, then I highly recommend using the block variant and basically just going with all of the talents on the bottom row of the perk tree. With the Arc Cleave core perk, you're able to do big damage whenever you have 2 stacks of Adrenaline Surge. Outside of the actual gameplay that the Techmarine brings to the table, we of course get a new character, and he's a bit more robotic, almost like the heavy Straben, but he's more concerned with upkeep of weapons and gadgets and all those other Techmarine type things. The actual character is pretty funny. The new animations, executions, and sounds are done very well. It's all very smooth, but one thing that I'm concerned about is whenever you are customizing your Techmarine, you're limited to only 4 choices for your shoulder pads, your gauntlets, and your boots. And this is pretty concerning because all of the cosmetic champion gear that everybody buys, or the chapter packs, or whatever it is going to be pretty inaccessible to the Techmarine. This is, however, all from the PTS, so this might be fixed by the time the Techmarine actually hits the live servers. Overall, I think that the Techmarine is a pretty solid class with its own unique playstyle, and it brings just enough innovating mechanics to the game to make me excited about what other classes Saber may potentially be working on. I know that the community wants to see Judiciaries, we want to see Chaplains, Librarians, and of course, Apothecaries. Ideally, Saber is able to pump up Space Marine 2 with as many classes as they possibly can so that they could experiment with a bunch of different mechanics for Space Marine 3 and have the assets ready for Space Marine 3. There are definitely some things that I'd like to see added to the Techmarine. For example, the Melta Rifle for the primary slot and the Thunder Hammer and the Power Fist for the melee slot. But I could see why they would hesitate to give this class the Thunder Hammer and the Power Fist, because the Arc Cleave class perk gives you an additional 25% increase to your charged melee attack damage on top of the 80% damage that you already have. And so having a class that can deal an extra 105% increased melee damage with big AoE weapons like the Thunder Hammer and the Power Fist might be a little ridiculous. The developers are probably hesitant to add those weapons to the Techmarine because they don't want it to completely overshadow the Assault or the Bulwark in melee. If I could ask the developers to do one thing other than bug fixes for the Techmarine, it would be to make the Reinforced Position Team perk linger on the player for 30 seconds after they leave the 15-meter radius of an activated Tarantula Sentry gun. And the reason for this is because the Techmarine is the only class in the game without an HP increasing perk or a damage reduction perk for all damage. You're only able to take the core perk, the Ominous Iron Axe Deflection, in order to reduce range damage, and the Prestige perk, Defensive Stance, in order to further reduce range damage. So you don't have any perks that reduce all damage done to your character. But I want to know what you guys think of the class in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, your viewership is greatly appreciated. This has been Jefficus, and I'll see you in game.